My name's Turner Hammett. I'm a blacksmith artisan. We're artisan blacksmith. I've been asked recently on how I forged these scrolls using C-channel. So I'm here making a video on trying to document the process of how I went about doing that. Hopefully it's helpful. Let me know. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. All right, so we're gonna be forging this scroll out of a piece of 1.5 wide by 1/2 inch thick piece of C-channel. I got it cut down at 7.5 inches long. And the first order operations is we're taking the back end of our cross-peen hammer, and what we're going to be doing is heating up about half of the stock in the forge and forging a groove down the center of it to where the center of the C-channel is touching the surface of the anvil, just like the edges here. And so that's going to be the first order operations, and at that point then we're just going to be tapering this down. Since this is going to be a scroll, the end of it, this needs to be a nice even taper all the way down from the end to the from one end to the other. One thing you got to be careful of is that as you're forging a groove down the center of this, these edges here are going to want to flare out. And so we want to minimize that by, as we're forging this groove in the center, using our cross-peen hammer, we're also going to be wanting to hit the edges, not only to taper it, but also to keep these edges from flaring out. So with that said, let's fire up the forge and get started. All right, so first heat out of the way. Start working it to where we get this W shape here on the end, using the backside of the cross-peen hammer like I said before. Trying to keep these edges from flaring out, but also started my taper, and we want a nice even taper from one end all the way down to the other. And this end we kind of wanted to get it kind of close to around 3/4 of an inch wide, because we're going to be welding that to the end of a piece of 3/4 by 1/2 inch, and so we want to keep that in mind as we're working on it. But first heat done, I'm going to stick it back in the forge, keep working on this process and get this nice taper going down. Got that in, tapered down pretty well. It's pretty close to 3/4 of an inch. So that's looking good. What I'm going to do now is flip it around and start working on the other side. Alright, so now we got the first part of the scroll pretty much forged out. Got a nice even taper all the way down. Got our W shape on here for the scroll as we made this channel going down it. Now, as y'all probably saw in the video, of course, these edges kept wanting to flare out. I just kept having to work that back in. Now, we do want it to flare out at one point, but just not right now. So just keeping that nice taper, keep these edges coming up straight. So the next part is going to be welding this end to this piece of 3/4 by 1/2 inch, flat stock. Now, another YouTuber has also done a video on these scrolls, and that's Black Bear Forge. He's probably done a better job at making a video about it. He came at it with a more traditional blacksmithing mindset. I'm coming at this with a more not traditional, but production mindset. You know, if you're doing this and you're trying to make a bunch of these and trying to sell a job, you're trying to make money off of this, trying to, you know, forge a scarf on each of these, forge weld them together for each scroll you're doing. That's not exactly practical, and it's going to take too much time, and it's going to be hard to make money off of that. So coming out from a more production mindset, we're just going to be MIG welding these ends together. I've already got these ends beveled. You want to make sure they're beveled so you get adequate weld in there. I'm just going to burn them in hot, just like that, and then we'll take an angle grinder and we'll just grind the welds down flat and make it seamless. So let's get to that. All right, so we got that welded up, got it ground down. Of course, like I said, this is not the traditional way of doing it, but if you're coming at this with a more production mindset, this is kind of the way you want to go. This will help you get the process done quicker and more efficiently than having to sit there, forge scarves on each end, wait for it to get the forge welding temperature, and then forge welding it together, making it blend. This is just a more simplistic way of doing it. So what we want to do now is that on these ends, it's just kind of flat and bare. If we're going to make a decorative scroll, we want to do something kind of decorative here. So what I'm going to do is, you can do this with a file. There's a lot of ways you can do this. I'm just going to use the same angle grinder I use to grind these welds down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind kind of a U shape right here on each end. Kind of reminds me of what maybe a dragon's tail would look like. But that's the next step, just to make it decorative. You don't have to do this. You can do it any sort of design you want. This is what I'm planning on doing, is just grinding these little U shapes right here with the angle grinder. So I'm gonna get to that, and I'll get back to you in a second. All right, we got those ends ground in there. This isn't necessary. Like I said, you can do this any way you want. It just kind of gives a nice decorative look. And so I ground in those little U shapes, kind of giving it a forked appearance. So that should look quite nice once we start rolling the scroll, which is actually the next step. So what we'll want to do is switch out our cross peen hammer, and we'll replace our cross peen hammer with a rawhide mallet. You can use a rawhide mallet, a wooden mallet, anything that wouldn't deface the surface of the steel when rolling it. We want to keep this material clean. You know, a steel hammer would mess up the surface. So I'm going to use a rawhide mallet, and what we're going to do is we're just going to start the scroll. I mean, this is just like making any other scroll. This is just basic blacksmithing, but we're just going to start it, and we're going to roll it over the edge of the anvil. Not the horn, we want to use it the edge, and we're just going to be using the rawhide mallet and striking from the end, and then working our way down, starting our scroll. And so that's going to be the next step. And I'm going to go get this in the forge, and I'll get back to you in a second. All right, now that we get the scroll pretty much forged, roughly forged, just trying to make this quick, show you the process. But you see we got that the nice clean lines going down it. You saw as we started it, the ends flared out. We did want that this time. Give it that nice decorative look. Just nice scroll, moving all the way back. Now you do see that these lines do stop abruptly where they go into the piece of 3/4 inch by 1/2 inch flat stock that we welded on. So what we're going to do next is take a couple of chisels and just kind of try to hammer in these lines to continue down into this bar to make a nice smooth transition. We're going to do the same on the top here. And so that's going to be the next step. We're going to throw it back in the forge. Get back to you in a second. guys, there we have it. We got the finished scroll here, all cleaned up. I think it turned out pretty nice. Hopefully this process was helpful, and hopefully it might have inspired y'all to do something cool in the near future. Maybe using this scroll, maybe something different, maybe trying out a different technique. Like I said, Black Bear Forge on YouTube has already has a video about this, and I think he probably covered it a lot better than I have. I came at it with a different approach, like I said, more of a production mindset than it is traditional forging. You can do it either way, but yeah, there it is. I think it turned out nice. If y'all have any questions or any ideas for a video in the future, maybe something that y'all might want to see, a process you might want to learn, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. Just let me know, and I'd love to get to it. So anyways, thank you for your time. Hopefully this was helpful, like I said, and I'll see y'all later.